This is a recording from a Sunday meeting of the BC Humanist Association in Vancouver. The opinions expressed in this podcast do not necessarily reflect those of the BCHA or its board of directors. To learn more about humanism and to support our work, visit bchumanist.ca, and make sure to follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, and be sure to subscribe to the BC Humanist podcast.
Thank you very much, Darwin, and thank you to everybody for inviting me here. Is this too loud? Am I too loud right now? Oh, I am loud.
No, it's great.
It's not too loud?
No.
I might get into my teacher voice and then just warn me. Okay, so thank you for that introduction, Darwin. As you mentioned, my name is Yasmine Mohammed. And if you're on Facebook or Twitter, then you can find me at Confessions Ex Moo. And this is I chose this picture to start off the presentation today because this is the photograph that it really just embodies everything about what I do. This really is the reason why I do any of this work that I'm doing for this activism. This is a picture of a Syrian woman who is leaving ISIS territory, and she's removing her hijab, her niqab, and also her abaya, which is the black cloak that they have to wear. And underneath, she's got this beautiful, colorful dress on, and I just love the symbolism of that. And you can see her mouth is in a huge smile, and if you watch the video, she's actually doing that sound that I can't do. If anybody here, you know that, so that's the sound that they make when they're like super excited and happy. And her husband is so happy for her, and her son is going to get to see his mom all free and happy. And so I love this photo. And that's basically me, but I don't have a picture to show it quite so pronounced, but this was my journey as well. And I'll talk to you a little bit more about that. So this is the mosque that probably all of you see driving along the highway. This is the mosque that I went to school in for grades 4, 5, 6, and 7. These big ornate doors here with the calligraphy across the top and everything. This is the men's entrance, so I've never actually entered from these doors. The women's entrance was in the back, off the kitchen, next to the dumpsters. That's how I would go in. Women were actually not allowed to go in through these doors. And we had like a makeshift school in there that was, it was basically like homeschooling. It was parents of other Muslim kids, and you know, if they knew how to add, they'd be like, great, you're teaching math, and somebody else knows how to, you know, just the basics of anything, and then they would just get them to teach us. So it wasn't really about curriculum or education. It was just about keeping us away from the infidels so that we would grow up, you know, pure and not getting any of the bad ideas from the outside world. So this is it's a stressor for a lot of conservative Muslims like my family was growing up in Canada, because they're always worried that their kids are going to become atheists. This is a picture of me when I was going to high school with my friend Lisa back there. So by now I had already been wearing the hijab for years, but this was me starting high school at Semiahmoo Secondary in White Rock. And so I was obviously the only girl in the school wearing a hijab, and you'll notice there's a bit of a unibrow going on there. It's against Islam to even pluck your eyebrows. So I think that people are really surprised sometimes to find out exactly how restrictive Islam is. Like, it really impacts every single aspect of your life. So there I was, conservative Muslim girl, going to a regular public school and sort of leading this conflicted life, constant confliction. I was very happy when I was at school. I loved my friends. I loved being there. And then I would come home and get told that the non-believers should be killed and that I can't be friends with them. And so what I was being taught at home didn't match what I was feeling around my friends and feeling around school. So I was the black sheep of the family. There was always constant struggle inside of me. I was always feeling guilty. I was always full of self-hate and always mad at myself that I couldn't conform to the way that my family wanted me to. And I thought I was going to burn in hell for it. So it was very scary. So I'm going to try and quickly tell you what life was like for me for those, almost 25 years of being a Muslim. And I want to tell you in about 3 minutes. So I've got a little video for you. Yeah.
Islam ensnares every moment of Muslim's life. How you eat, how you live in the bathroom, how you put on shoes, how you have sex. Every single aspect of your life is mapped out so that there's no opportunity to think. You're trained to just follow, do as you're told, don't ask why. Get in line with the rest of the Ummah, community Muslims. Like a school of fish, it's instinctual. That's the way it is. That's the way the brainwashing goes. Like a soldier trained to take orders and react. Thinking is deadly. Questioning is punished. It is much more true for women than it is for men. Under Islam, a woman's sense of agency is non-existent. Her individuality is completely erased, or rather, never given an opportunity to flourish in the first place. Sometimes, like it was for me, the statement is both literal as well as figurative. My entire being was dampened by a black shroud, covered from head to toe, without even my eyes connecting with the outside world. I'd float around other humans almost like a ghost. I could see them, but they couldn't see me. I was invisible. My humanity was completely eradicated. I wasn't Yasmine. I was a faceless figure shrouded in black. My wants, needs, interests, desires, preferences were never even considered, least of all by me. I didn't know that there was such thing as choice. I'd never made a decision. I just did as I was told. I was miserable. But my misery also made me feel guilty. Why couldn't I move along with the other fish? Why did I yearn to escape their hold? Wasn't this the path to heaven? Any other direction was hell. Why wasn't I strong enough to fight the devil, luring me to imagine a life where I could swim in different waters? Islam is ingenious in its hold. Aspects of its tactics can be found in Mormonism, Scientologists, and Jehovah's Witnesses. But Islam is the only religion that combines all the different ensnaring elements into one, and then turns up the intensity tenfold. Islam's hold on your body, mind, and spirit is such that almost 15 years after denouncing the religion, I'm still discovering and suffering from remnant conditioning of my mind. I don't think I'll ever be truly free. I was only able to free my body. But I have not failed. My daughters are free. My daughters will never be able to relate to or understand any of this world. They will listen with their eyes, unable to fathom that existence. And so, even if I have to take this indoctrination with me to the grave, I don't mind. I'm happy to take it with me 6 feet under, far away from my daughters, where it can't hurt anyone else from my bloodline. They'll all be free to spin in any direction we choose.
can stop it, yeah. I'm unable to skip, so if you can skip it. Oh, I got it. So as Darwin mentioned, I brought a cloth here for show and tell. This is the kind that I wore when I was married to that man. That's Assam Marzouk. He's a member of Al-Qaeda that was sent here to help with 9/11. So as you saw before, I used to just wear the hijab, and then I had to start wearing this. So what you do is you tie it like that, and then if you're in the company of people that you can trust, then you can lift this up and your eyes can show. But this wasn't allowed. I had to be like this. So I'll pass this around. One common thing that I hear all the time is it's their culture. They're okay with it. They don't mind. So Muslims are just human beings, just like all of us, right? So I'd like you all, men and women, when this comes around, put it on your face and let me know if you feel comfortable with it. Let me know if you're okay with it, and it's totally fine because it's culture and we have to accept that. There you go. So this was taken from an article. I was asked by an interviewer, you mentioned that you were forced to marry a member of Al-Qaeda, and on your website you say that this particular one was bailed out of prison by Osama bin Laden himself. Can you give us an idea of what day-to-day life is like being married to an Al-Qaeda fighter? And I said, it's been almost 20 years since I escaped, and that question instantly put a knot in my stomach and filled my eyes with tears. I don't know how to accurately describe this to you. I suppose the best analogy I can think of is suffocation. Have you ever had that moment of panic because you swallowed something the wrong way and now you're coughing and you can't catch your breath? Expand that moment into years, and that's probably the best way I can explain it. This is a photograph of him behind bars in Egypt. CSIS contacted me to confirm that that was him, and I was very happy to say, yes, it's him. So he was sentenced to 15 years hard labor, but his sentence is up, and I don't know if he survived. I don't know if he's out. I don't know if he's still in. I don't know anything about his current situation, which is part of the reason why I was very nervous about speaking up and doing what I'm doing now, because I, have a daughter with him, and I needed to make sure that my daughter was safe. I've changed her name, first and last name, and he hasn't seen her since she was a baby, so hopefully he wouldn't be able to find her. And she has moved out because she's 20 years old now, so even if they do find me, they won't find her. So these are all sort of things that I thought about before I started to become vocal. But as Armin and I were discussing right before this all started, when I first began my activism, I was anonymous. But I was getting contacted by people from Saudi Arabia and Egypt and Iran and Pakistan and all over the world. And for me to speak up, even with this shady guy never knowing where he is or if he's going to find me, I'm still in a better position to speak up than people in the Muslim world. So when I saw all of these people contacting me and saying, oh, thank you for speaking on our behalf, thank you for getting our voices out because we can't say anything, then I started to feel like it was my responsibility to take this more seriously and to put my face and name out there and to really believe that, to really be the voice for the voiceless. And I know that Armin and my other secular jihadists agree, and that's kind of the position that we're in right now. I don't know if you guys are familiar with Raif Badawi. His wife, Ansaf Haider, is Canadian, and their 3 children are here, and Raif is in prison in Saudi Arabia for just being a liberal thinker. He didn't even say anything against Islam. And of course, there's the Bangladeshi bloggers that were hacked to death and left in the streets. And, in Pakistan, just recently, there was a hashtag for an atheist that the hashtag was hang Nizam Ayazi, I think was his name. And they were saying, it went viral because they all wanted him dead because he was an open atheist. So when you compare my situation, as bad as it was, I just needed to get out of my family. Once I got away from my family, I'm very, very lucky to be in a wonderful, secular, free country, and I could get student loans, and I could go to university, and I could go on with my life. But that's not the case for millions and millions of people who are, like us, agnostics, non-believers, or even just non-Muslims. So the same for Christians as well, as you might have heard what happened this morning in Egypt. So as long as if you're not Muslim and you're in a Muslim majority country, you're not safe. So I feel like I need to speak up for all of them. So as I mentioned in my video, I eventually got out of Islam, as you guys probably guessed that by now. So like I mentioned, I got away from my family and I started going to university, and I was getting away from my family because of all of the abuse that was going on there, and it was super conservative, but I still identified as a Muslim. I didn't think that the problem was Islam, I thought the problem was my family. But then I took a course at university called The History of Religions. And was that your experience too? Okay. And then that's when I discovered that this divine book that was supposed to be the Word of God verbatim is just a bunch of plagiarized stories from other religions and from pagan stories before that, and it was all a farce. And so that was my first, sort of like the first thread being pulled out of the sweater before it all unraveled. And that's also when I discovered that everything that had happened to me in my life that I thought was my family, all of it traced back to the religion. So my mother was a student at Al-Azhar University, which is one of the most prestigious Islamic universities in Egypt, well, in general, but it is in Egypt. And so she was very strict. She was very careful. She's very, she did not mess around. If the Hadith said this, or if the Quran said this, then that's what we're gonna do. So, she would sit me down and make me promise to her that if the caliphate rose, I would be willing to chop off the heads of my friends. And my very best friend, Tiffany, was the person that she always chose. Tiffany's gone now, otherwise she'd be here. And she'd make me promise that I would chop off Tiffany's head if the time came. So when there's 1.6 billion people all following this same book, not everybody's going to take it as literally as my mom did, but a certain percentage will, as you know, because you all read the news and you see what's going on all across the world. So even though this is my specific story, it's not unique. This is a story that's familiar to many millions of people across the globe. So that's when I decided to get into activism. If you could open up my website for me, please, confessionsofanexmuslim.com. And I decided to reach out to those people because I felt really alone growing up, and I felt like I was a crazy person, and I felt like, what is wrong with me that I can't just join in with everybody else? Perfect, thank you. And so I wanted to reach out to other people that are feeling that same sense of loneliness that I felt when I was growing up. And, had social media been around when I was leaving Islam, I'm sure I could have saved so much money on therapy. I'm so grateful for it now, and I can reach people in countries that they can only be honest in their own minds. Like, they can't speak out to anybody. In the third episode of our podcast, we speak with Rana, who is a Saudi Arabian girl, and she was an atheist for 5 years in Saudi Arabia, and she couldn't tell a soul because she would be killed if she tells the wrong person. So just that, like, if you can just imagine having that, and then having to, like, put a hijab on and go pray with everybody, and Raif Badawi was telling Ali Rizvi, who is one of our co-hosts, he said, I don't even care about being in prison. I hate that they make me pray. I hate that I have to read the Quran. Like, it's just so invasive, So this is my website here, and these are the different things that I've been up to. And that's Majid Nawaz, which people, he's a reformer. He's a Muslim reformer, and he's a man that I respect immensely. And people find it strange that I have such respect for Majid. In fact, I'm wearing Solidarity t-shirt in my profile picture, and I support Quilliam. I myself do not believe in reforming Islam because I'm an atheist, and I believe that all of that is fairy tales. But I will definitely support somebody who is working towards secularism and human rights and equality for the LGBT community, and all of the things that Majid is working towards. We agree on those values. So there's my Solidarity t-shirt. So I'm very happy to support him and work with him. So when I first left Islam, everything was really exciting. The humanist community was so inviting, and I felt like, oh my gosh, this is what John Lennon was singing about in Imagine. Like, this is it, And I was so excited, I was so happy, and for a long time I didn't mention that I used to be Muslim. I was just a humanist, I'm agnostic. I kind of went through this long process. But then when I started to mention that I used to be Muslim, that's when things turned ugly. So if you could go to the... And things turned ugly, of course, because as we all know, criticizing someone's religion is gross and racist. I hope you're all familiar with what this is referring to. So Ben Affleck was on Bill Maher, and Sam Harris was also a guest that same day. And Sam Harris and Bill Maher were talking about all of the problems in Islam, and Sam Harris had that famous quote where he said, Islam is the motherlode of bad ideas. And Batman just lost it. He was enraged, he was like flailing and like just yelling, and he's like, you're gross, you're racist, it's just terrible, it's disgusting. They just want to eat sandwiches. So he just, and it's very ironic that he would get so upset over Sam and Bill having an opinion criticizing Islam, basically when he did a whole movie criticizing Christianity. So that's sort of the sacred cow area that Islam is in, that I found myself in when I started to say that I was an ex-Muslim. All of a sudden, I was spreading hate, and I was racist, and I was a bigot, and I was an Islamophobe. People that I had known for sometimes over 20 years, people that I went to high school with, were telling me that I was an inauthentic voice because I had been jaded by Islam, so I'm being too aggressive. And I'm like, you've known me all of these years, and I was never aggressive before, and I was never racist before, and now all of a sudden I am. So I believe that Islam should be up for ridicule, just like every other religion and ideology should be up for ridicule. Nobody has a problem with the ex-Scientologist or ex-Mormon or ex-Jehovah's Witness or Westboro Baptist Church, there's Megan Phelps is getting a TED Talk, Leah Remini is getting an A&E documentary, ex-Muslims get told that they're hateful and they get shut down. Ayaan Hirsi Ali was supposed to go to Australia just recently, and they had a huge campaign against her, and she got so many death threats that she had to cancel her trip. It wouldn't be the same if she was an any other religion. The knee-jerk reaction that happens is that people automatically say, not all Nazis, or sorry, not all Muslims. But I was gonna actually compare that to when you start to talk about, the Nazis killed Jews in Germany. Nobody says, well, not all the Nazis. Some Nazis were good dads, and they also wanted to eat sandwiches. Nobody says that. Right? Like, we understand that when we're talking about it generally, and we're talking about the people that are a problem. The same thing, like, nobody says not all communists, nobody says not all Republicans. We can criticize ideologies, no problem, until it comes to Islam, then things are totally different. And I think the reason for that is because we have trouble separating people from their ideology when it comes to Islam. So this problem doesn't really happen in any other situation for some reason. So what we have here is people have rights, ideas don't have rights. So when we talk about Islam, we're not talking about Muslims necessarily. Again, there's 1.6 billion, that number is probably wrong because of all the ex-Muslims that aren't allowed to speak up. But let's just say there's around 1 billion people that follow this religion. Obviously not all of them. But when we're talking about the religion, we can criticize the religion, we can talk about the problems in the religion without saying, oh, that means I want all Muslims to be killed, or that without being racist, or without being a bigot, et cetera, et cetera. Obviously, some people are bigoted and racist, and that's anti-Muslim bigotry, and that's a real problem. But that's not the kind of work that Armin and I and a lot of ex-Muslim activists, that's not what we're doing, obviously. So when we are unable to separate people from religion, then we end up with some confusing problems. Oh, speaking of confusing problems, there it is. So when we're unable to separate humans from their religion, things like this happen. So obviously humans above religion. Here we have Iran in 1979. These women are protesting the mandatory hijab. So you can, as far as the eye can see, you can see these women out in the streets yelling, and if you go on YouTube, you can watch a video of this happening. Screaming and yelling, and up in the balconies are all filled with women as well, saying, no, we don't want this. We don't want to wear, don't tell us what to wear. We are against this in 1979. And then, in the free country of the United States of America in 2017, we have a complete betrayal of these women. This here was so upsetting to so many people like me, and to so many people in Saudi Arabia who are forced to wear hijab, and so many people in Iran and Somalia. I was in Canada and I was forced to wear hijab from the age of 9. So it's no geographical borders. This is a religious thing. It's an idea. It goes across the planet. There are tens of millions of Muslims in Russia, and in Chechnya it's like Muslim majority. People think that it's like a brown people religion. No, it's not. It's across the planet. So this conflating of humans and religion causes a lot of problems, because what's happening here is these women think that they're celebrating Muslim human beings, but they're not. They're celebrating Islam. They're celebrating the ideology that is oppressing these women. So that's why it's really important to understand the difference between the two, because then you end up supporting the wrong thing. So the next video I'm going to show you is Gamal Abdel Nasser, who was president of Egypt. And this video is from the 50s. And, well, I'll just let you watch it. It's up at the top, you can read the...
مع الإخوان المسلمين على أن يسيروا في الطريق الصحيح والطريق السليم. وقابلت المرشد العام للإخوان المسلمين وطلب مطالب. طلب إيه؟ أول حاجة قال لي يجب أن تقيم الحجاب في مصر. وتخلي كل واحدة تمشي في الشارع تلبس طرح.
That's the reaction. Yes. Let him wear it, it says. These are mostly men. This is in Parliament, as Darwin mentioned.
يعني إذا الواحد قال هذا الكلام ورجعنا لأيام الحاكم بأمر الله اللي كان بيخلي الناس ما يمشوش بالنهار ويمشوا بالليل. أنا في رأيي إن كل واحد في بيته هو اللي ينفذ هذا الكلام. فقال لي لا، أنت باعتبارك الحاكم مسؤول. قلت له يا أستاذ أنت ليك بنت في كلية الطب مش لابسة طرحة. ما لبستهاش طرحة ليه؟ فكنت أنت. إذا كنت أنت مش قادر تلبس بنت واحدة اللي هي بنتك طرحة، عايزنا ننزل نلبس 10 مليون طرح في البلد.
Thank you. So that's in the 50s. And they laughed at it. Oh, that's just ridiculous. That's never going to happen.
So for those of us that didn't get a chance to read the subtitles.
Oh, sorry. So basically, he was saying the Muslim Brotherhood went to him and they said, we need you to make sure that every woman in this country wears a hijab. And then he was like, and then everybody started laughing in the audience. They thought it was hilarious. And one guy yelled out, tell him to wear it. And then he basically told the story of like, your daughter goes to university and she's not even wearing a hijab. And you want me to go and put it on 10 million women? So he's against the idea. He says, obviously I can't tell people what to do in their own homes. It's their own business. But the Muslim Brotherhood was insisting to him, no, you're the leader of this country and you should force people to wear the hijab. So that was just to show you how the humans reacted when the religion was being forced on them. Just like those of you who have tried on... Oh.
Your scarf is when we have two mics on. It's when we have two mics on.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
What was I saying?
How humans reacted.
Oh, right. So how do humans react when you try to impose religion on them? So it's the same thing in Iran, same thing in Egypt, same thing for me in Canada, same thing for those of you who have tried on the hijab. That's what I was going to say, yes. So for those of you who have tried on the hijab or tried on the niqab, and that being told you have to wear this when you don't want to wear it, any human is going to react in the exact same way that you would react if somebody told you to put something on against your will. So I wanted to talk a little bit about this humans versus religions thing because I think that that's a common issue. So here you have a bunch of different women from a bunch of different cultures and what they used to wear before they were colonized by Islam and forced to start wearing the hijab or the niqab. My family is from Egypt, and you're all familiar with ancient Egyptian civilization, right? And it would have been eradicated the same way the Buddhas in Afghanistan were bombed or were detonated with dynamite, the same way the statues in Syria were being bombed as well. The same, you know, in Iran and in Iraq and all over the world. The idea of Islam's plan, Muhammad's plan, is to get rid of the current culture and replace it with Islam. It didn't work so well in Egypt because the Brits came in and they found the pyramids and they found the tombs and they found the Sphinx and they were like, stay away, we're going to protect this. So that's the only reason why we even know about ancient Egyptian culture today, was because of the Brits. The same is not true for a lot of these other countries that lost their cultures, replaced by Islam. When people start to say Islamic culture, to me, it's like a trigger. I get really upset because Islam is not a culture, it's a religion that tried to impose itself on top of our cultures. So Egyptians used to have their own language, now they just speak Arabic. Egypt was one of the first countries to be colonized by Islam. So, you know, Egyptians will even call themselves Arabs now, even though they're actually North Africans. It's like this really slave mentality almost, where they've internalized their master's religion and culture and completely lost their own. So when we have conversations today about Islamic culture, it's just a testament to how good of a job Mohammed did by eradicating all of our cultures and replacing it with Islam. I want you all to please be aware that these are all human beings that are from hundreds of different countries, and they all have a very rich and diverse culture that has nothing to do with Islam. This time we can actually say nothing to do with Islam, and it's true. When you remove Islam from there, you'll find that there's food, there's music, there's art, there's language, there's traditions, there's all of this stuff under there that is totally different from all of these, that they're not all the same. But people tend to think of Muslims as this big monolith, this big one group, and as if they're all united and they're all working together. No, they actually, a lot of them hate each other. But, but in a lot of ways, too, these cultures don't even interact. Like, if I were to meet somebody from Indonesia, for example, which is a Muslim majority country, we don't share the same, if I'm talking about my Egyptian background now, like we wouldn't share the same language, we wouldn't share the same traditions, we wouldn't share anything about our cultures are not the same at all. And I think when we compare it to other religions, like if you meet a Catholic from the Philippines, you wouldn't expect them to be anything like a Catholic person from Italy. Like obviously they're going to have two completely different cultures. And it's the same for Muslims. So when you're celebrating or respecting or honoring Muslims, there's no such thing. What you're doing is you're respecting and honoring a religion. You're not respecting and honoring the people. So I just wanted to really talk about that because it's something that really makes me sad, especially after what happened in Egypt today. Egypt is almost 90% Muslim, and even the 10% of Christians that are left aren't good enough. You know, it's like, nope, got to get rid of them too. Even 90%, not good enough. And those 10% are the actual real Egyptians. They're the only ones that didn't take on the religion and the culture of their masters. So I wanted to show you two more short videos. I won't go through the whole thing, but this first one is a hashtag that if you're on Twitter, I hope you'll support this hashtag. It's Stop Enslaving Saudi Women. And this is just to show you how people on that side of the world are fighting really hard for their rights. Meanwhile, here in the West, we're like respecting their religion and honoring it and putting, United States of America flag hijabs on and stuff. And this is how people are actually living on the other side of the world.
Being a woman in Saudi Arabia is exactly like being a slave. Can you imagine being an adult woman and having to get permission from a male guardian, like your father, husband, or even your son, in order to do basic things like getting medical treatment or traveling abroad? That's the situation women face in Saudi Arabia. Women there are now calling for an end to male guardianship with the new social media campaign. I spoke with one of the activists who wishes to remain anonymous for security.
Men have more power. If I leave the house and my male guardian doesn't want me to, then he can go to SKG. That means going for a directive to jail.
All right, let's.
And I will spend the rest of my life in jail until my guardian.
I'll have to just pause it there, but if you're interested, just in YouTube, just put "Stop Enslaving Saudi Women," and this should be the first video that comes up. The woman in the pink hijab.
Now we got it. Go ahead.
The woman in the pink hijab, her name is Moody, and she's in the United States now. So she was given asylum. She did a BBC documentary, and then her life was in danger, so they got her out. I had another short video there of women in Iran, and that was for the hashtag #MyStealthyFreedom. And basically, I won't play the video for time's sake, but I hope that you'll check out that hashtag #MyStealthyFreedom. So these are just women that are taking pictures of themselves without a hijab on. That's it. And then posting it on social media. And those pictures could get them fined, imprisoned, or even killed. And like I was mentioning before, we now find ourselves in this really unholy left-right alliance. So when I'm talking about all of these things that are happening in the Muslim world and things that happen to me, I'm talking about right-wing Muslims, obviously. These are conservative Muslims. Somebody like Linda Sarsour, who praises Sharia law. That's about as far right as you could possibly get. So it's really crazy to find somebody who's that far right of a Muslim being celebrated and hailed as a hero by Bernie Sanders, who's like the most left-wing of all American leaders. So we feel like there's like a betrayal from the left wing in the West. The liberals here, you'd think, would be supporting the liberals there, but unfortunately that's not what's happening. It's the liberals are actually supporting the far right. So it's very confusing. In this march, they wouldn't even allow conservative Christians. They said if you're pro-life group, you're not allowed. Meanwhile, they invited CARE, and they invite somebody who, not just invited somebody who supports Sharia law, she was one of the co-chairs. So it's a bit of a complete...
CARE is
The Council of American Islamic Relations, thank you. So in a nutshell, we celebrate the hijab by putting a Nike swoosh on it, but we wouldn't celebrate, Mormon underwear or Amish clothing by putting a Nike swoosh on it. That's exactly how I feel when I see a hijab with a Nike swoosh. That's exactly how I feel. This is far right, just as much as these are far right. Actually, way more far right than these guys. I think the confusion is that it's flipped. So in Canada and America, probably most people believe are liberal, and very fringe minority are the conservative far right. But in the Muslim world, that's generally flipped. So most people are conservative, what we would consider far right, and a few fringe minority are risking their lives to be liberal and to speak out and to be honest about the fact that they believe in liberal values. So you'd think that little group there would get the support from liberals over here. But no, there's a confusion, and instead we're supporting the far right. So this was made by Mohammad Sayed, who is the president of the Ex-Muslims of North America, which is a group that is made to support ex-Muslims, because it's an anonymous group, and Mohammed goes through a lot of trouble to vet all of the members to make sure that it's safe for them. It's sort of like an Alcoholics Anonymous for ex-Muslims, just to get together and talk about all of the traumas that we've been through and to support each other. So Mohammed made this to compare Trump to Prophet Muhammad. And this is somebody that everybody recognizes as, oh my gosh, he's a Republican, he's right wing, he's crazy pants. But this guy, we love him, we have to respect and honor him, right? So it's when you take a look at it and if you think Trump is right wing, so what is this guy? Like super far alt-right, like way more right wing than Trump could ever possibly be. So, my main message to you today is to please ask you to treat all religions with equal contempt. If we're going to undermine Christians from bringing the Lord's Prayer into our secular public schools, let's respond with equal vigilance when Muslims want to have Islamic prayers in our secular public schools. For one group, we say absolutely not, and we're very loud about that. And for another group, we're like, this is Canada and people should be allowed to do whatever they want to do. So that's not treating all of them with equal contempt. And so I hope that we'll remain just as vigilant and just as strong and just as outraged over all of these religions. In Canada specifically, I talked about the unholy left-right alliance, but we have that Canadians are like the nicest people on the planet, right? We know this. So we're always very careful. This is Ali called it the Islamophobia phobia. Everybody's so afraid to be called Islamophobic that they keep quiet. Even when people are talking about things that we totally disagree with and that we do not want those kinds of ideas we don't want to agree with them. They're completely against our values, but we won't say anything because we don't want to offend anybody. So what's happened now, you might have heard of the Motion 103 that just got passed recently. Myself and a lot of other ex-Muslims were very concerned about the word Islamophobia in this motion. And I know that it's just a motion right now, and if it just stays there, we're good. But the problem is that it is very likely that things will continue to push, just like they continue to push in Egypt, just like they continue to push in Iran, just like they continue to push in the UK, where it now has over 80 courts with Sharia law in them. When somebody comes and bullies you and you give them your lunch money, the next day they're not going to just ignore you, right? It's going to keep going. So our biggest problem with M103 was the term Islamophobia, because the term means basically an irrational fear of Islam, Islamophobia. Islam calls for my death because I'm an ex-Muslim. Islam calls for your death and your death and your death and the death of all of you in this room, the death of most most Canadians. So it's not irrational for us to fear an ideology that calls for our death. What they were trying to express was anti-Muslim bigotry, so bigotry against Muslims. That we would be totally behind. But when you call it Islamophobia, that is stirring up what I was talking about, Raif Badawi and the Bangladeshi bloggers, and in Pakistan, and all of these people in all of these countries that are not allowed to speak out against Islam. So people like Armin and I do speak out against Islam because we are in a secular free country. And now we're being told in our free country that we also can't criticize Islam. So who's left? Who's ever going to criticize Islam? I mean, Mohammad must be so happy and proud right now that 1,400 years later, his decree that nobody criticizes Islam is working across the whole planet. Over there, it's blasphemy laws, and over here, we just self-imposed blasphemy laws, right? We shut each other up by yelling Islamophobia or by passing these motions. So this is one video that I do want to show you. This is a girl who was protesting against M103. This girl is from Pakistan and she's Muslim, and she's wearing a hijab, or she's wearing a niqab, not because she wants to or because it's for religious purposes, but it's for safety. Because if she's seen speaking out against this motion, then she's putting her own life at risk from the Muslim community, and then probably also from far lefters as well that are calling her a Nazi and a racist and everything else. So we can play that, please.
Silence is deadly. What does that mean?
Can you turn your mic off? I think they're just conflicting.
Other Muslims are persecuted because they're different. And we should be, and it's not in the name of religion. And if we don't speak out against them, then they're killed.
Are you from the Islamic fold yourself, then?
I am.
Which country was that?
I'm from Pakistan.
And so you've seen, I guess, the dark side of Sharia in your own nation.
Absolutely. My family members have seen people accused of blasphemy law, tied to the back of cars and dragged through the streets and killed that way. There's a woman, Asya Bibi, she's been in jail for 7 years because someone falsely accused her of blasphemy. And there's a Christian girl who's a refugee. She was accused of blasphemy and she escaped with her life and here in Canada. And can you imagine how she feels when something similar to the blasphemy law that she escaped from is like being implemented here in Canada?
And what's incredible is that, I mean, you've lived through this, you've seen it with your own eyes, and yet you have these predominantly white Canadians that are having a counter-protest about what you're doing, and they're calling people like you and others here racist, bigots, Islamophobes. What's going on?
The problem is they're not very intelligent. That happen in different parts of the world. We come to Canada for a better life. We want to leave that world behind, and we want to celebrate the beauty and the values of this country. And we don't want that horrible, horrible draconian laws to follow us here. Sorry.
What can they possibly say to you when you point out, listen, I'm originally from Pakistan, I've seen the dark side of Sharia, why are you campaigning against people that are standing up for freedom of speech?
Well, when they call me fascist and they call me a white supremacist, I tell them,
Call you a white supremacist.
you're a white supremacist. Last time I was here, they're calling me a Nazi scum and a white supremacist. And I'm like, I'm not. How can I be racist against my own people? And they say, it doesn't matter, you still are. And I want to say to them that I'm standing up for my women, my sisters that have died, my sisters that are in jail, the Safiya girls. They were Afghani Muslims, and they were killed because their parents thought they were too westernized. Canada is a beautiful country. I was born in Canada. I went back to Pakistan many times. My parents are from there. My family still lives there. And my family, it's just a horrible thing. They don't understand. They'll never understand until they live there. They wouldn't even last 1 day under Sharia law.
Like what you just saw, then. Right below it. Never miss another rebel video.
So that's how Muslims are reacting to M103. Not just her, lots of Muslims are reacting that way to M103. But of course, when they react that way, to M103, as you saw, she had to put the niqab on because they are putting their lives in danger. But it's important to note that most Muslims are like her, and they're in Canada because they love Canadian values and they want to be living here. And they want to be living under our values, not the values of the countries that they ran away from. But there are the right-wing conservative Muslims, like the family that I grew up in. They are the ones that are pushing for M103. They are the ones that are pushing for the prayers in the secular public schools. And just like we wouldn't turn a blind eye to right-wing Christians pushing for these things, we also should not turn a blind eye to right-wing Muslims pushing for these things. So just as a final note, my call to action for you is to please be an ally and to speak out for liberals all over the planet. Do not be scared when people try to use slurs like racist and bigot and Islamophobe against you. People like Armin and I know what it feels like to be in the receiving end In fact, we're risking our lives by speaking out. So I ask you to please have those uncomfortable conversations, and the more uncomfortable conversations you have, the more we can spread this word, and the more we can support liberals and support human beings across the planet. Thank you.